AITA for leaving my girlfriend's things at her ex's door after she compared me to him? I met Brianna a little over 2 years ago. A mutual friend introduced us at a small house gathering. It was nothing special. She was quiet, reserved, and seemed to have a complicated life, but she didn't show it in a dramatic way. We talked for hours that night about music, plans for the future, and simple things. She seemed like a genuine person to me, with clear goals, even if she was a little worn out by life. We started dating shortly after. In the beginning, it was a normal relationship. I would even say it was healthy. We each lived in our own apartment. We went out on weekends, cooked together when possible, and talked a lot. Brianna told me she had dropped out of college 2 years prior due to student loans and financial problems. She came from a family with few resources and had tried to work while studying, but she couldn't sustain both. This frustrated her a lot. She said she felt like her life was on pause. Back then, I had a stable and well-paid job in the corporate sector. I wasn't a millionaire or anything close to it, but I was doing well. I had worked hard to get there, and for the first time, I felt I had some stability. I paid my rent and bills and still managed to put a little into my savings account. I never considered myself a big spender, but I also didn't like living in fear of my bank account balance. Our relationship evolved quickly, but not in a forced way. After almost a year together, we started talking about moving in together. It wasn't an impulsive decision. We talked many times, analyzed pros and cons, lease timelines, and responsibilities. Brianna was excited, saying it would be a new beginning for her. I saw it that way too. I thought sharing life with someone I loved was the next logical step. When we moved in together, we agreed that I would cover most of the expenses. She had some side gigs, but nothing fixed. I earned enough for that, and it didn't bother me. I never saw it as a burden. To me, it was an investment in our future. Furthermore, I knew Brianna wanted to go back to college, and I wanted to support her. A few months later, she went back to school. I was the one who paid for enrollment, textbooks, gas, and most of the household expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, everything. I didn't do it because she demanded it. I did it because I offered. I felt that if I was in a better financial position, the right thing to do was to help. She seemed grateful. She said that without me, she wouldn't have made it, and that one day she would pay me back somehow. During this time, our living arrangement was good. Not perfect, but stable. We had normal arguments, almost always about small things like schedules, cleaning, or fatigue. Nothing out of the ordinary. I worked long hours, sometimes arriving late and exhausted. Brianna took care of some things at home, but not always. I never kept score of who did more. It didn't interest me. One thing I noticed over time was that Brianna talked a lot about her ex-boyfriend. Not all the time, but she mentioned him more than I considered normal. At first, I thought it was because it had been an important relationship for her. They were together for several years before breaking up. I am not a jealous person, so I didn't pay it much mind. She said her ex had been a complicated person, but that she had also learned a lot from him. Sometimes she compared situations without realizing it. I didn't take it as an attack, but I admit it bothered me a little. Still, I preferred not to cause a scene. As the months passed, I began to feel the weight of being the sole provider for the household. Not because Brianna did nothing, but because all the financial responsibility fell on me. If something went wrong, there was no margin for error. If I got sick or if there was an unexpected medical bill, everything depended on my salary. I started living with a constant pressure that I didn't always show. Even so, I continued to think it was worth it. Brianna was progressing in her studies and seemed more motivated and secure. We talked about plans for the future, finishing her degree, getting a better job, and maybe moving to a bigger place in the suburbs. I told myself this was just a phase. Then came the blow I didn't see coming. One day, I was called into a meeting at work. It wasn't uncommon, but the mood in the conference room seemed different. A representative from HR was present. In a few minutes, they explained to me that the company was restructuring and that my position had been eliminated. Everything was very fast and cold. They gave me a basic severance package and an immediate termination date. I left that office building with a mixture of disbelief and fear. I had never been unemployed since I started working. My head filled with questions. How was I going to pay the rent? What would happen to Brianna's tuition? How long would it take me to get another job? That night, I drove home with the weight of the world on my back. I knew our situation was going to change, and I had no idea how we were going to deal with it. When I told Brianna that I had lost my job, her initial reaction was calm. She said it was nothing, that these things happened, and that the important thing was for us to be together. In the first few days, she was understanding. She even tried to cheer me up, saying she trusted me and that I would find something soon. When the subject was money, the stance was the same. She said she could help by cutting expenses, commented that we could buy generic brands at the grocery store, avoid expensive outings, and choose more affordable fast food when we wanted to go out. I listened to everything carefully, but something caught my attention from the start. She never mentioned contributing part of her paycheck. Brianna worked part-time at a boutique stationery store near our apartment complex. She didn't earn much, I knew, but her income wasn't non-existent. I never expected her to pay half the bills, but I thought naturally she would offer to help with something. Even if it was symbolically paying for a share of the groceries, the internet bill, or simply saying, "I can help with this." That never happened. At first, I tried not to make a big deal out of it. I told myself that maybe she didn't see it as necessary or was embarrassed. Even so, that omission started to stay in my head more than I would like to admit. I started cutting costs, canceled streaming subscriptions, stopped ordering takeout, and reduced my personal outings almost completely. I did the math 1,000 times to make sure the money was enough. Brianna continued with her normal routine: college in the morning, work in the afternoon, and some outings with friends on weekends. I tried not to interfere. It didn't take long until I got another job. Fortunately, I found work relatively quickly, but it wasn't comparable to the previous one. The hourly rate was lower, the benefits package was minimal, and the workload was heavier. Still, I accepted without thinking much. We needed stability, even if limited. When I gave the news to Brianna, she was happy, hugged me, and said she was proud of me. For a moment, I felt relief. I thought that with this new income things would start to settle down again, even if we had to live with less. This relief didn't last long. Within a few weeks, Brianna started making comments that sounded strange to me. In the beginning, they were subtle, almost casual. One day during dinner, she said, "Honey, don't you think this job pays too little? Maybe you could look for something different." I didn't take it personally. I explained that it was temporary, that it had been a short time, and that my plan was to gain experience while looking for something better. She understood, but didn't seem convinced. Days later, she brought up the subject again. "I've been thinking, maybe you could work a second job or drive for a rideshare app for a while. That way, we would be more comfortable." This bothered me a little more. It had barely been a month since I got that job. I was still adapting to the schedule, the environment, and the workload. Working two jobs wasn't something simple, physically or mentally. I said I didn't see it as viable at that moment. She didn't insist, but I noticed her expression of disappointment. The comments started getting more frequent and more uncomfortable. They were no longer isolated suggestions, but constant small comparisons with a lifestyle we no longer had. One day, while scrolling on her phone, she showed me a photo. "Look, babe, my friend's new smartphone. It's the latest model. Beautiful, isn't it?" I agreed without much interest. "I was going to ask for it for my birthday, but I know you couldn't," she added. "That's fine. I'll settle for a cute little gift." She didn't demand anything, but the message was there. I felt uncomfortable, as if I were failing at something that was previously guaranteed. I didn't answer anything. I just smiled automatically and changed the subject. From then on, I started noting a pattern. Every comment came with a seemingly understanding tone, but always made it clear that I was no longer living up to what she expected. She never said, "I need this," or "I want that," but she kept constantly insinuating. I, for my part, felt increasingly exhausted. The new job was demanding, and the pressure of making ends meet left me constantly tense. I slept poorly and was irritable. Even so, I tried to keep calm at home. One day in particular was especially bad. At work, I made a mistake involving some inventory. It wasn't anything serious, but management reprimanded me and informed me that I would be financially responsible for the damaged goods. The value wasn't high, but it affected me emotionally much more than I expected. I felt like everything was piling up. I left work downcast, thinking about numbers, bills, and responsibilities. I knew that having to cover that cost meant less breathing room that month and less peace of mind. While driving home, I started questioning things I hadn't allowed myself to think about before. I asked myself if I was really in a relationship of mutual support or if I was just carrying an increasingly heavy weight. I started to feel that no matter how much I did, it would never be enough. For the first time, the idea of breaking up with Brianna crossed my mind seriously, not as an impulsive reaction, but as a real possibility. I felt the relationship no longer gave me peace. On the contrary, it drained my energy, my money, and my emotional stability. I arrived at our complex, parked the car in front of the building, and turned off the engine. I didn't get out immediately. I sat there, hands on the wheel, staring ahead, seeing nothing in particular. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. I didn't go in because I knew what was coming. I knew that upon walking through that door, I would likely hear another comment, another comparison, or another indirect way of reminding me that I was no longer the same provider as before. I didn't have the strength for that today. There inside the car, in silence, I started accepting something I had been denying myself to admit. The relationship no longer felt like a partnership. I felt like I was alone, even while living with someone. Finally, I got out of the car and went in. Brianna was in the living room, sitting on the sofa, looking at her phone. Upon seeing me, she looked up and greeted me normally, as if the day had carried no weight at all. "Hi," she said. "I actually wanted to talk to you." I hadn't even taken off my shoes when she continued. "This weekend my friend is having her bachelorette party out of state. She wants us all to go. I wanted to go, but I need to bring money for the hotel and drinks." I nodded automatically. I didn't have the energy to argue. "Okay," I replied. "Take it from your savings." She frowned slightly, as if she hadn't heard right. "And you aren't going to give me anything?" she asked. "My savings are for something else." That was enough for something inside me to snap. I looked at her calmly, even though inside I was furious. "For what other thing?" I asked. "This expense is yours. Actually, you should start contributing a little to the house with your savings. You literally live here." Her expression changed instantly. It went from surprise to anger in seconds. "You have a distorted view of reality," she said, raising her voice. "I am your girlfriend. You are the one who has to pay for everything. You're a man, aren't you?" The phrase hit me harder than I expected. I took a deep breath before answering. "Yes, I am a man," I said, "just a man trying to survive. But I can't survive if there is a woman making me spend all my money." Brianna stood up from the sofa, visibly irritated. "Wow, I didn't know you were one of those," she said with sarcasm. "Now you're going to tell me you want a 50-50 relationship or something like that." "Yeah, I'm sorry to inform you, but my ex-boyfriend was the one who knew how to treat a woman." At that moment, something broke. I didn't answer immediately, and I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked to the bedroom, grabbed a plastic storage bin that was stored in the closet, and took it to the living room. I started putting all of Brianna's things inside: clothes, shoes, personal products, everything I found in front of me. "What are you doing?" she asked, agitated. "What is this?" I didn't look at her. I continued packing. "He knew how to treat a woman?" I said finally. "Then fine. I'm taking you to him." It was then that she seemed to realize I was serious. "Baby, calm down," she said, approaching. "I didn't mean that. I'm just stressed." I stopped and looked at her for the first time since I started packing. "You stressed?" I replied. "You contribute nothing. You just drain my accounts. You are a leech. Get out." I closed the box, picked it up, and left the apartment without waiting for an answer. I took the things down to the car and went back to get more. While I did this, Brianna followed me crying, trying to talk to me, asking me to calm down. When I finished loading everything, I opened the passenger door. "Get in the car," I said, "if you don't want me to throw all this in the dumpster." She hesitated for a few seconds, but in the end, she got in crying. I started the car without saying a single word. During the whole drive, I kept my gaze fixed on the road. Brianna talked nonstop. She said she was sorry, that she hadn't thought, that she was tired, and that she didn't want to break up that way. I didn't answer. I knew exactly where I was going. I knew the building where her ex-boyfriend lived because a friend of mine, Kyle, lived there. While driving, I picked up the phone and called him. "Hi, Kyle," I said. "Could you tell me which apartment Marcus, Brianna's ex, lives in?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "Yes," he replied. "He lives in 512. "What?" I hung up without giving explanations. I arrived at the building, parked the car, and got out. I grabbed one of the boxes and walked to the entrance. Brianna continued crying inside the car. I dialed the code on the intercom. "Hello," Someone answered from inside. Yes. Hello, I said. Marcus, I'm bringing a package for you. Ah, sure, he replied. I'll be right down. While I waited, I heard Brianna's sobs behind me. I didn't move. I said nothing more. Marcus came down a few minutes later. I recognized him instantly, even though I had only seen him once in person. He seemed surprised to see me, and even more so to notice the situation. The boxes were stacked near the glass doors of the lobby, and Brianna was still inside the car crying. When Marcus approached, Brianna opened the car door and rushed out. She walked up to him and, without saying anything else, knelt in front of him on the sidewalk. I stood a few steps away, watching without intervening. Please, she said between sobs, help me, don't leave me here. Marcus looked at her confused, then looked at me, and then looked back at her. His expression changed from surprise to nervousness in a matter of seconds. Before any of us said anything, he spoke. Look, if he already knows, I didn't want it to be like this, he said. I thought he wouldn't find out. You guaranteed me. It was just a casual thing, just for fun. I don't want anything serious. These words were enough. He didn't need to say anything more. In an attempt to justify himself, he gave himself away. He didn't speak of an assumption or a misunderstanding. He spoke as someone who knew exactly what he was being accused of. Brianna looked up instantly, as if she didn't understand what was happening. What are you talking about? She asked. Don't say that. Marcus took a step back. He didn't answer. This isn't what I want right now. I'm not going to get into trouble again. He looked at the boxes, then at Brianna, and shook his head. Don't count on me, he added. It's over. I didn't call you to come here. Without saying anything else, he turned his back and went back into the building. The security door clicked shut behind him without anyone else intervening. Brianna stayed there kneeling, motionless. The silence was heavy. I didn't feel satisfaction or immediate relief. Just a bitter confirmation that many of my doubts weren't just in my head. I approached the boxes and left them by the entrance. I went back to the car and opened the door. Your things are there, I said. Don't look for me again. She just cried. I got in the car and drove away. The drive back was different. I didn't feel the same pressure in my chest that I had been having for weeks. I also didn't feel euphoria. It was a strange sensation, a mixture of sadness and lightness, like when we let go of something that weighed too much, even if it hurt to carry it for so long. When I arrived home, the apartment seemed empty, not by her absence, but by the silence. I sat on the sofa and let exhaustion catch up with me. That night, I slept better than I had slept in months. The following days were not easy, but they were clear. There were no calls, no messages. I didn't look for her either. I concentrated on my work, on organizing my finances, and on recovering routines I had set aside. Over time, something changed. My paycheck, even more modest than the previous one, started to be enough. Without the constant spending, the indirect demands, and the pressure to meet other people's expectations, the money stretched. I managed to pay the rent, the bills, and the groceries, and I still had enough left over for small pleasures. Nothing extravagant, but enough to feel in control. More importantly, I recovered my peace of mind. I stopped feeling afraid to come home. I stopped waiting for comments, comparisons, or complaints disguised as jokes. I went back to feeling that my effort made sense. Several months have passed since then. I won't say my life is perfect now, but it is stable. And that stability is worth more than I imagined. I learned that not every relationship ends due to a lack of love. Some end due to a lack of respect, reciprocity, and understanding. Today I understand that helping someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself completely, and that a relationship shouldn't feel like a constant burden. That was what I lived through. That was what I learned. Comment. Sometimes, the hardest thing we ever have to do is walk away from someone we love. We often confuse sacrificing our well-being with being a supportive partner. But real love should never make you feel like you're constantly auditioning for a role in your own life. Setting a boundary isn't an act of cruelty. It's often the highest form of self-respect. You deserve a relationship where your efforts are met with gratitude, not endless demands. It's okay to choose your peace over the chaos of trying to please someone who cannot be pleased. Healing begins the moment you stop waiting for an apology that may never come. Trust that your value is defined by your character and resilience, not just by what you can provide. Keep moving forward with your head held high, because a lighter heart is the best reward for letting go. I hope you find the courage to prioritize your happiness today. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.